Hi, I'm Mina Malik Hussain and you're watching The Coffee Table, and today we have a really exciting show, and I have not said that for at least 2 shows, so I get to say it today. We are going to be talking about safety online. We're talking about cyber harassment. We're talking about the bills that we have in place to protect us from it, and what a scary world it is out there on the internets. But thankfully, there is awareness and there's a great deal of fantastic work being done. And we are welcoming today on the set 2 people who work with the Digital Rights Foundation of Pakistan, who are at the forefront of campaigning for and advocating for our online safety and human rights online. And we are delighted to have on set today Janat Fazal, who is the cyber harassment helpline lead at DRF and also is a clinical psychologist, and Shmyla Khan, who is a program and research manager at DRF and also a lawyer. Multitasking everywhere. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
It's very exciting. I have many questions. Because it's also such a sort of burningly important thing to have to talk about. Or not have to, but why not to talk about? Exactly, yeah. So Janat, sort of starting, let's begin at the beginning. But what is cyber harassment?
So basically, if we talk about harassment is to make somebody feel uncomfortable.
Right.
So if it's happening online, it becomes cyber harassment. So if you make somebody feel uncomfortable on any online platform, it's cyber harassment. If you impersonate, if you dox, if you blackmail or threaten on the basis of their pictures, it is cyber harassment. So I guess Shmyla can highlight the legal definition of cyber harassment, I can tell you more about how it manifests in Pakistan. Yes. But it's very important that we understand that anything that makes you feel uncomfortable basically is harassment. And if it's happening in online spaces, that is cyber harassment.
Okay, so it still completely counts legitimately as harassment, even though it's on the internet.
Yeah.
So legally, how does that kind of translate?
So for the longest time, there was this, we didn't have a law that covered online spaces at all. And I think it sort of was part of a larger attitude that the legal system had towards online spaces because it wasn't considered as important. So it was something like you post something on Facebook for fun and then you come back. So people didn't think that serious things were happening there.
Yeah.
And now we know, for example, elections can be decided on Facebook as well.
Yeah.
So it's a political space, it's a violent space as well. So now with the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, which came about in 2016, it's a law that we generally we resisted and still don't agree with, and we're facing the repercussions of that even now, and we can discuss that later. But it does acknowledge certain forms of online harassment. So if anybody tries to defame you online, if anybody shares or manipulates any intimate pictures of you online, and if somebody bullies you online, the definition for cyberbullying is a little vague, but essentially, if somebody persistently contacts you without your consent, if somebody disseminates your pictures without your consent, those are all forms of harassment. And the fact that it happens online doesn't make it less severe. So I think that acknowledgement in the law was something that was very important, and that's a shift that has happened in recent years.
Yeah. And do you feel like that the definition has to be vague? Because there are so many kinds of harassment that's happening online that I'm sure we're still even discovering new ways to do it.
Yeah.
So it has to be kind of amorphous enough to be able to include future harassments, as depressing as that sounds.
Yeah.
Someone will come up with some innovative way to make your life miserable.
That's actually a very good question in the sense, so that's something that lawyers also, I guess the law has to play this balance between being vague but not being too vague, because when it comes to laws that regulate speech, if it's too vague, then the government can essentially term anything that it doesn't like as something, yeah, exactly.
Anything problematic.
Terrorism or so that's why we always sort of resist and that vague laws. But I think especially with something that relates to technology, for example, when the law was made, something like TikTok didn't exist.
Yes,
so
exactly.
It's constantly evolving. Things like mass trolling is not captured by the law. So if somebody is being harassed, they have to go after individuals. But rather than they can't prosecute, for example, 100 people at the same time for mass trolling. But that's a problem, and it happens it doesn't happen in isolation. It is a campaign that is sort of launched against people sometimes online.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
those are things that the law,
common.
exactly, and the law didn't anticipate that. So that's how does a static law keep up with the times? I think is a very generally a question.
And I imagine that for that, there's also a question of having lawmakers and policymakers who are cognizant of what's happening in the internet world also, like we were talking about this. I think, if there's an older person who doesn't know what Snapchat is, and how can you explain all the dodgy things that could happen on Snapchat?
You try, but I mean, it's very hard for them to understand it. You try your best, but it's very hard even for the people who are working in the investigative agencies prosecuting these cases. Even it's very hard for them to understand how things are happening online, how one picture can be doctored and can be used against a person, and the repercussions it can have on somebody's life. They still do not know, and they don't understand it as much as we'd like them to. But
it's true, and I imagine that's it's probably really challenging for the work that you guys do at the Digital Rights Foundation also. And from what I understand, it was set up in 2012. And so how long has the helpline been operational?
So helpline it started working in 2016, December. Okay. So yeah, we received our first call on 1st December, 2016, yes.
Well, that's fantastic. So this is a cyber harassment helpline. Yeah. And what does the helpline do? Like, why would you need help?
So helpline does two things. One is that we act as a relay center between FIA, the Federal Investigative Agency, that has this jurisdiction to over PICA, and then we sort of send the victims to FIA, but because we have to guide them how they're going to lodge their complaint, what remedies do they have. So it's done. We sort of we act as a bridge between a victim and the Federal Investigative Agency.
Okay. So the government and the regular person.
Yeah, and So, and the other thing that we do is that we do content takedown. So if we get complaints where people do not want to come forward, where they want to remain anonymous and they cannot lodge a complaint because, the system, how they sort of stop and do not appreciate and support women, especially younger young females or children, to lodge a complaint. And most of the times it's very difficult for them to go to FIE cybercrime wing offices because they're sometimes not in their cities. So for them to lodge a complaint, they'd have to go there. Sometimes they don't want to.
You can't do it on the phone either? You can't lodge a complaint over
the complainant has to be there in person to lodge a complaint.
Which makes it really difficult, I imagine, to do a complaint at all, because a lot of times you don't have access, you're not very mobile either.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? Ask your brother to take you to the FIA
So basically,
office?
that's what hinders them from lodging a complaint. And also because they don't have support. So what if their pictures have been disseminated online, if they've been shared online, so they can reach out to us and we can escalate their complaints and have them taken down. So we have escalation channels with different social media companies, and we do these takedowns, content takedowns, and sometimes they're morphed images and doctored images posted on porn sites. So we also get those removed. So yeah, that's what Helpline does.
Wow, it's so scary, when we think of progress, we think of the internet as a way that connects people and is this wonderful resource that you have at your hands to, sort of read things online, like, ooh, no more encyclopedia, just Google things. But it's also so scary because it makes so many people so vulnerable.
It does. That is why it's very important that, that we have to be cognizant of what we're putting online. We're not saying that you shouldn't be, but you just have to be very cognizant of what you're putting online, because anybody can use that against you.
Yeah.
So any information that is out there can be used against you. So it's you have to be aware of what is out there about you. So it's very important that you self-dox yourself.
Yeah. So what is that? Let's sort of unpack some of these terms also. Like what is doxing, for example?
Doxing essentially it actually comes from like early internet culture where these sort of men online, I just imagine a man in a hoodie.
It's fine. It's be kind of good. Men.
Usually men.
Gentlemen internet users.
Somebody in a dark room sort of sitting there. And like, it's really funny whenever like there's news about somebody getting like harassed. There's always like a picture of a man with a hoodie. So that's the image in my head.
On like some really old, sort of desktop and like a massive mainframe.
And like their keyboard is green for some reason because that's cyber.
Cyber.
So even if I
just stereotype people, but it's okay.
The word cyber is also kind of outdated as well. Yeah. Like I mean, what does cyber mean in that sense? But yeah, I guess it has that recognition. But yeah, when it comes to doxing, it is when your personal information is put up online, and it can be different pieces of information that can make you vulnerable. So sometimes, for example, if somebody puts your address or your phone number online, that's essentially, and this usually happens to women, and a lot of times this happens to women and even transgender individuals because it's a way to punish them. And so sometimes, like if a jealous ex or someone can put up your number online, and
people will start calling you.
Yeah, and maybe say this person is a sex worker. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you'll start getting calls soliciting sex. So that's sort of these things in order to punish people, to make them vulnerable, and sometimes even like information that might not directly lead to someone showing up at your doorstep, but even something like your gender identity, for example, if somebody reveals that online, and if you don't want that shared online.
If you haven't come out and somebody's just kind of outed you for being bi, for example, then that also counts as doxing. Because I think it's really important to be aware of the things that happen, but then also be aware of what it means, the parameters of it, because we still, like you said, we're still so ignorant about a lot of etiquettes and a lot of sort of, and not just manners, but safeties. That we need to be, sort of exercising or be aware of when we're using the internet. And, from the website of DRF, I see that DRF supports human rights, democratic processes, and digital governance. And there's a lot of advocacy for the most vulnerable people on the internet seem to be minorities and women and activists.
And children.
And children. So that's, on one level, you're like, oh, children, internet. That doesn't really happen, but it does happen all the time. And there's so many kids on the internet as well. So we have these various groups, and you mentioned trans people as well. And these are all people who are very vulnerable on the internet. And then that leads to a lot of online violence as well, because it's harassment kind of seems in a weird way, like, some annoying person who's like whistling at you in a cyber corner. But violence it takes on like a different connotation to it. So what is online violence?
I think we are very conscious of the fact to use the word violence when it comes to online, because
I think it's very effective.
Yeah, exactly, because it really brings, just because something is happening online, we tend to think of violence as physical only, but it can have, not only can it have sort of an effect that it is very violent in terms of like sort of mental health, but it can actually lead to like violence offline. So we've had cases where blackmailing has led to suicide attempts, honor killings. A lot of times women, when they are found out, like sort of their digital identity is revealed online, they're denied, like sort of sometimes women call us up and they say, if somebody finds out that my pictures have been leaked, my family will stop sending me to school. So those are really like sort of real life consequences, and that's why we think that it is violence, and I think it's been recognized now as violence, like even in international law as well. And the point about like sort of vulnerable people online, it's again because we tend to sort of think of like IRL, the real world, and cyber as different.
Different.
But the same social structures and hierarchies that we have offline manifest online as well.
Really?
So if you're a woman in like real life, you will always be a woman on the internet.
Yes.
And even though people do try and they're very innovative about hiding their identity, but just the fact that you have to hide your identity because you are vulnerable. So not everybody's experience of the internet is the same.
That's really important also. That's something I want to talk more about, and we're going to take a very quick break and come back to this extremely important conversation. Stay with us. Hi, welcome back to the coffee table. We're talking to Janat, Fazal and Shmyla Khan from the Digital Rights Foundation about online safety and violence and what we can do to protect ourselves. Very important and very, very topical work being done. So, Janat, tell me that when people call the helpline, and again, this is something I will be repeating now for the next sort of, X number of minutes, is that real life and digital life is very much the same now.
Yes.
And because we have apps like Instagram, for example, or we have Twitter, and we have like even Google Maps, and our apps know where we are at all times, and we're encouraged to overshare our lives, and people know that if we were to Insta this, and they know what you were up to and what I was doing, and Google Maps knows where we are at this very moment.
Even if your internet's turned off, yes.
Even if the internet is turned off, it still knows where I am.
Yes.
Oh. Okay. I thought I really had turned off my location.
Even if you turn off your phone, there's still ways to find you.
Okay, I think we'll take another break. I throw my phone into the ocean.
He's not strong enough.
Put it in here. Oh my God. So, what kind of people call the helpline?
There's no particular kind. So, there's a group that is more vulnerable, that's children and women. But there's no one kind of person that's calling or becomes a victim, because we have to understand that you don't have characteristics of victims. So you cannot categorize them as, this will be a victim and this will be somebody, who would be...
who can fight them off.
And because it doesn't work that way. Anybody can be a victim of cyber harassment, just like anybody can be a victim of harassment.
Yes.
So it's very important that we understand that there's a nexus between, online space and offline space. And just like Shmyla said, that sometimes online space, harassment occurring on an online space manifests in different ways, but it can also translate in your offline space as well. So if somebody is harassing you online, has shared your pictures online, somebody, perhaps could be your ex, your, colleague, or somebody you don't even know of.
They can also, a complete stranger can do this as well. The same way that if you're walking down the street and a complete stranger tries to touch you, it's the same kind of...
It's the same. It's the same. And then sometimes because they, we tend to overshare, like you said. So what happens is they know where you are. So they can actually, if it's a complete stranger, they'd know if they can stalk you. They can, if they're cyber stalking you, they can stalk you in your physical world as well. So it can translate that way in your real life as well. Also, if you're experiencing, somebody is blackmailing you, threatening you, they'll start perhaps, being violent to you in your physical space as well. They'll start harassing you in your physical space as well. So it translates, and we've received such cases where, it translates and it shifts from online to offline and offline to online. So we can't say that there's, they're two separate worlds. They're linked, they're together, and we have to understand that whatever etiquettes and, decorum that we have here in our real life, we have to follow that in our online space as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important to keep emphasizing. And also this idea that I think that, I can't speak for other cultures, but I think that for us, social media and the internet has been both a bane and a boon, because we live in cultures where we, for example, have limited mobility. It's hard to meet people generally outside of certain circles. So the internet in a way is kind of cool. Like on Twitter, for example, you get to talk to lots of fun and interesting people, and it's amusing and it's entertaining and it's cool, and you learn things and you make friends as well. But it's also kind of scary in that same way that you were saying, Janat, is that people can tend to be really sort of forthright with their opinions on the internet that they might never have done in real life, Like people would just say and do things that they never dream of doing in real life. And that's a weird space.
Yeah, I think because the person who is affected by those comments is probably not in front of you. There's this sort of dissonance that you have, and probably Janat can speak to that more, sort of the psychological element of that.
Initially, it was just, because people would refrain themselves from saying anything in person, because then you can also confront them, and they'd know, how this made the other person feel.
Yeah, and also a physical reaction to your words.
And also they would not
actions.
have the guts to say it.
Indeed, it's true.
But because of how cyber world works, I know it's not cyber, it's an online world work.
Digital world.
Digital world. So why harassment increased in the digital space is because people got anonymity and there's rapid dissemination of information. So they would get away with saying things because they're anonymous and they're hiding behind, there's sometimes trolls and they're hiding behind fake profiles, and names. But we have to understand that the impact of it is as much as a physical comment impact.
Very important. Very, very important. That just because you're typing some mean thing on Instagram in a comment doesn't mean that it has no effect, or it doesn't affect people who are reading, the intended recipient of that comment.
Because, you're telling somebody that, you don't, if you body shame somebody, which is very common, and you see those comments online so often, but you don't understand that how this person, who's, very shy, has already problems, and, they're very concerned about their body image. And even if it's somebody, who says them these things in person, they'd feel bad. So if they're reading those comments by strangers, they definitely feel bad. So we have to understand that whatever we are saying online has an impact on the other person. It has real consequences for them as well. So because it's online and because I don't know them does not mean that they're not going to get affected by it. So it's very important that we are mindful of what we...
And it's such a weird thing because these kind of things I feel are really restrictive to freedom, and that's also something that the DRF has a lot of conversations about, because being safe online is also not just limited to trolls saying or strangers saying you're very ugly, wax your arms type of comments, but also things like our basic human rights online. And I didn't realize that was actually a thing. Like, that's a thing, isn't it? Isn't it?
When actually I started working at digital rights, I started telling people in my family, and they were like, what does that mean? Do the devices have rights?
Robots have feelings? What?
And maybe they do. Soon enough they will. But I think that's also something that we've been working on, and I think now it's becoming much more of a conversation where. For example, if we have freedom of expression, if we have a right to information, if we have a right to privacy, that's also a constitutional right, but generally a right that we espouse in society, in democratic societies. And they don't just manifest online, offline. They also are exercised daily online as well. So, for example, if somebody wants to organize a protest, the online element is now such an important part of it that if you shut down the internet, so for example, what happened in Kashmir, as soon as they repealed Article 370, they shut down the internet because they knew that people will be mobilizing online. It'll be a very important part of the resistance that will come from the people. So the interplay between those rights is very important. So when we talk about the right to privacy, for example, it's no longer like sort of the traditional, the government can't enter your home without a warrant. It's actually like companies and the government entering every aspect of your life because so much of it is digital. So that aspect of like making those sort of traditional rights digital rights and that they apply equally online and getting people to take them seriously, because I think a big challenge that we have talking about the right to privacy, for example, is that people just don't, because the impact isn't immediate, like sort of sharing something or clicking yes to the Facebook's terms and conditions.
Yes.
We don't really know the true impact of of what that means.
Yes.
And that's not entirely our fault. These companies have repeatedly deceived us and have been non-transparent in the way that they use our data. But getting people to care about that, sometimes there's a problem. And so sometimes, for example, when we talk about the right to privacy, we say, will you share your picture publicly online? And a lot of people say, yeah, I don't see a problem with that. And then we say, okay, will you stand at like a bus stop and hand people like copies of your photograph? And they'll be like, no, that's really creepy. And we're like, it's kind of like the same. Anybody can take a screenshot and you're in somebody's phone and you don't realize
it's true.
So, I mean, that isn't to scare you because
I'm a bit scared. No, oh my God, I never thought of it that way. No, but it's really important to think of it this way because it's true.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And you don't know who has access to who. You know, even if you are on Instagram and it's just friends and just people you know, but you don't know if someone you know on your Insta is showing your picture to someone else.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know,
if it.
Yeah, and what if your, you know, friend that you have on your Instagram have their account's compromised? What then?
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
I mean,
sort of all sorts of like terrifying situations, but you're right.
So,
if you get hacked, and it's not that difficult to be hacked or so impossible that nobody could ever hack your account.
Yeah, so I mean, if somebody's account's compromised, it makes you vulnerable as well.
Yes.
So it's very important that, you know, whatever you're sharing, you have to make sure that, you know, we do not at all say that, you know, you have to sort of stop using the social media because we should, and we have to learn how to navigate these spaces. But you just need to know that, you know, whatever you are sharing, you just need to know that if it's out there, you shouldn't have any problem with it being shared with the world. So if you're like, you know, if you're sending somebody pictures through Snapchat, so just make sure that, you know, you trust that person. Otherwise, don't, you know, I mean, we're not stopping you from sharing those pictures, but there's a way, you know, like safer nudes and all that. So just, you know, either remove, you know, take pictures, you know, like where your head's, you know,
or like
neck down.
Many clothes.
So, but, you know, remove your face and something that is identifiable from your body, you know, just remove that so that even if you want to share pictures, do that. But, you know, just be safe.
That's really interesting. And these are things that I want to talk more about. I think it's really important that you sort of keep reminding us that nobody is saying stop using the internet or stop using social media.
Use.
Because, you know, it's okay, you use it, but use it in ways that are intelligent, are sensible, and you can protect yourself. But also because this is also something that a lot of people say in their sort of warped defense of harassment is that, well, you are in a space and you've put your information out there and you've put your photos out there. So if somebody misuses it, that's on you.
Yeah,
that's your fault.
That's true.
Which is,
no. I mean, it's the person who is misusing it, it's their fault, definitely. I mean, because a person who's getting affected is never wrong. I mean,
it's not the victim's fault.
It's never the victim's
fault.
fault.
Shitty person taking screenshots where you shouldn't have to, then you're the bad person.
Yeah, so but you sort of have to, you know, we have to find that balance where we have to sort of, you know, follow certain, I don't know, you know, safety measures and protocols where we do not make ourselves vulnerable. So if we're making ourselves vulnerable, we're more likely, I mean, not saying that it'll happen, but it's just that, you know, there's a possibility of it happening. Somebody, you know, misusing it. So
and you could trust somebody now, but they may not be trustworthy 6
later,
months after the fact as well.
This logic is really funny because people say like, oh, if you shouldn't put up your picture online if you don't want it to be misused. But that's the same logic that people use when they say, oh, if you were harassed in the street, you shouldn't be in the street, so women shouldn't be. So it's the same logic that we keep saying. And, oh, you shouldn't have, maybe women shouldn't go to work, so we wouldn't have workplace harassment. So because always the conversation and the onus of the entire conversation is on the person who is harassed and the person who is the victim rather than sort of inverting that. So it's always, I guess, a limitation about like how we framed a lot of these questions as well. And
absolutely, it is super important. I shake your hand on this because it is really important. And we're going to like take a very quick break and come back to this very good conversation. Stay with us. Hi, welcome back to the coffee table. We're talking about your digital security with these lovely ladies from the Digital Rights Foundation. And we were talking about putting your information out there on the internet and how you are perfectly entitled to do what you like with your images and with your information. And you, even to people who you feel are trustworthy, but then there are also sensible ways generally that one can interact with people online. And some of them are...
So one shouldn't have to restrict themselves.
Everything.
So one shouldn't have to restrict themselves. Like if I want to share my picture, I should be able to share my picture. Why should I, stop myself from sharing my picture? A, I need to be cognizant of who am I sharing my picture with. B, like, Shmyla said, you said that it's never the victim's fault. So if anybody misuses it, it's not your fault. You need to report. You need to seek, support from the authorities.
And so FIA is somebody who you can report to, or you can call the DRF helpline if you don't know how to do it. The DRF will help you. If you call the helpline, they will walk you through it. So, and it's very safe. So don't be scared.
So we can help you. FIA can help you. Otherwise, there are ways that you can, the certain practices that you can adopt. So, you don't get vulnerable. So, or identified. So if you want to share your nudes or anything like that, you can, take pictures neck down. So like, cut your face out. So, so nobody can sort of identify it's you. If there's any identifying mark, just remove that.
So what if you put like Shmyla said, you can put a smiley on it?
Don't do that because there are ways to remove that as well. So, I mean, why not take, pictures?
But that's important to know because, you think, it's just not showing here, but there are lots of sort of like dastardly things out there. I feel so old-fashioned. I'm like, bad things out there.
So, I mean, if it's not there, it cannot be sort of, misused. Your face won't be.
And what about things like if you take a picture of yourself with like two friends, for example, and you put that up on your Instagram, should you be asking those other people in the photo if it's okay to share that
you should
image?
be, because consent is very important. So if I want to upload anything, I need to know that the other person who is, picture, I'm uploading, they may not be comfortable with their picture online. So I have to ask them whether I can put this up or not. And then if they don't allow me, then I need to respect their decision. And I may be in the picture, but they're in the picture as well. So it may, it may have been taken from my camera, but that does not mean I have the right.
That's also really important. And there's also things like, what if you're doing some crazy thing and you don't want it on the internet, you don't want your mom to see it or your boss to see it. You have a right to be able to have some control over your images. But I'm also thinking about children online. And we've talked about kids on the internet. And we always feel like, but kids, it's just kids. But even like photos of kids. And we have this weird thing where we don't ask for consent. I was at a mall the other day and somebody took a picture of my kid. In a very innocuous way, it was a lady who took a picture because she thought that my kid was cute. And I saw her and I was just like, please, you can't take pictures of my kid without asking me. And please delete it. And she was really good about it. And she's like, I'm sorry. And she deleted it. But just the idea that it's such a violation, and the fact that obviously, like culturally, we're not very attuned to these things. That, it's just a kid. But then there's a lot of child sexual abuse that happens online. And DRF is working to do something about that.
I think child sexual abuse is something that has been a taboo for so long, but the internet has really, unfortunately, facilitated a lot of the abuse. And now we see that when abuse happens offline, it can often be filmed and used to blackmail both the kid and the family. And for example, like the case of Kasoor in 2015, it was such the entire sort of area was gripped by this sort of mafia where they were, I think around 300 families were being blackmailed, and these kids' lives were completely ruined because of that, because of continual abuse that was happening over so long. So the abuse, because of the online element, can be prolonged, and the victim sometimes has to relive the abuse over and over again when they see it, if it's filmed and if it's been, and child pornography is an entire industry as well, unfortunately. So in Pakistan, there are laws to counter that as well. So child pornography is strictly criminalized and there's a strict punishment against it. But even then, a lot of material, once it goes online, it is very difficult to take off. And especially when copies are made and something is shared on multiple platforms. So we've been working on this sort of element because while you can prosecute someone, the material still stays online. So and we've been trying to. This is something that we want to work with the government on. But we're next month we're launching a portal which is with the Internet Watch Foundation, where where anybody can go report any abusive image, so they can upload the image or they can sort of send a link. And what happens is that image is then, there's a sort of digital fingerprint that is made of that image, which is called a hash. And then that image is not only removed across platforms, for example, if it's on Facebook, Twitter, or any other platform, it'll be taken off. And then there will be blocks in place. So if somebody tries to upload it again, that image will be blocked.
Oh, cool. So the hash should be like a little flag saying, no,
exactly,
you can't do that. That's amazing.
So,
God.
And it's been, I think it's operational in 29 countries so far. And it's very important because I think when we try to talk about sort of child sexual abuse and child sexual abuse online, there's a lot of rhetoric in our sort of general vicinity, where people are talking about public hangings and things like that. But there's very little understanding of like the nuances of how it works and the impact that it has on the child. So these solutions, I think, if they work together, it's very important for that online element to tie into the
And predatory behavior is really easy to perpetuate online because, like we've been talking about, you can have a fake ID and a fake profile, and you can be on an app that a child, and when I say child, I don't mean like a 5-year-old. I mean like a 10 or an 11-year-old who might be on Snapchat, who might have an Insta account, who might be on TikTok. And there are all sorts of creepy, horrible people out there who can catfishing it's a kind of a form of catfishing, isn't it? But then there's a lot of online grooming of children also, which is equally horrifying and scary. And it's not just, you hear about grooming in context like, you got groomed for ISIS, but you also get groomed for a lot of predatory child abuse rings and all sorts of terrible things that happen.
Yes, because it's very easy to, children are vulnerable. It's very easy to manipulate them and coerce them into, and how grooming works is that you sort of guilt trip children into doing things. So basically, I ask you to do something you may not know, but I am that adult who's supporting you, who's, has that emotional connection with you. So I would sort of instill guilt in you for not agreeing to what I'm asking you to do. So you would feel bad. And then I would sort of withdraw from you a little, not completely because I want to, violate you, but I'd withdraw from you a little, and then you would feel bad because you were hurting me. So
it's classic abuser, predatory behavior.
Yes.
And the internet then probably makes it easier as well, in the sense that a lot of parents are not as technologically advanced as their kids. In the time-honored tradition of all time. But I feel like now it's even more concerning for maybe our generation of parents, because technology is developing so fast that even if you're trying to keep up,
it's difficult. Things are changing, things are evolving, but it's also very important that we keep learning. We cannot just say that, they should not be using these gadgets or they should
shut
not
them all down.
We can't do that, because then you are taking away their resources to learn and grow. So they won't be at pace with the rest of the world. But what you need to do is you need to understand, like you said, that if a 10-year-old, 11-year-old is on Facebook, why are they on Facebook when Facebook says that the minimum age to start using Facebook is 13? Why should people younger than that be on Facebook? So it's very important that at least parents know what their children, the social media platforms they're using and the age limits that have been set by those platforms. So these can be done. There's something that they just need to, learn. And it's
so
important.
Parents have to be on the ball. You have to get out there and see what's going on with these apps. And parental controls are obviously only useful to a certain point.
Parental control, I mean,
where it's like, you don't flip a little switch on your internet browser where you're like, no, but that doesn't seem like enough.
And more than parental control, you need to talk to your child. you have to tell them, this is something which can sort of hurt you, and you should not be using these, you should not be accessing these websites, or, but parental control, if it's a 13, 14-year-old kid and parents have this parental control, that kid is still going to access those sites, or they're still going to use
They're going
them.
to find a way.
But they won't be, but then they'd know that, if I use them at home or something happened, I can't go to my parents. So it's very important that parents give them that support, because, I mean, if you're going to control, they're still going to do it.
Yeah.
So why not give them ways?
Yeah. So secrecy is not going to help anybody.
Nobody.
And being in the dark, even about the different kinds of things that happen out there, is not going to help anybody.
So because, I mean, predators sort of prey on those children that, don't have support from their families usually.
Yeah.
So they know that they cannot go back and they cannot confide in anybody. So who's going to help them? Nobody. So that is why they're, an easy prey. So it's very important that you give your child that support, that confidence that, whatever happens. You come tell me. It's okay if you use that, because it's that age. They're learning.
You made a mistake and it's okay. You can sort of move on. And it's also scary because these social media companies are also very keen to kind of, take all our information and sell it to the highest bidder. And you don't want that for yourself, but certainly not for your child either. And this is also somewhere where we should be kind of generally, because I'm thinking of ways that we can protect our information and our data, because there's like a lot of it out there. And
I think there's a lot of, now there's a lot of conversations about laws that can be in place, because for the longest time, like I think when the social media giants like were starting out, there was no regulation, and they had this like free party where they were like, oh, but there's all this data that we can monetize, and nobody really thought about that. Like it was sort of like a natural resource that was just lying there, and then they
like an oil field, a cyber oil field, like put a pump on it. But this is but how can you monetize data?
Yeah, that's so. For example, like it's very interesting. Like so, information that would be mundane to maybe 20 years ago, like how long it takes me every day to go from point A to point B from my house to my office, would be like, I mean, it would be interesting to some people. Maybe my mom would be interested, but like nobody beyond that. But what these companies have done is like sort of, because you're constantly being tracked through your location, they can sell that data to, for example, Uber and Careem, and they can know then maybe to target me for a certain like a certain deal that offers because if I'm using that app if I'm traveling that route every day.
So things that don't seem like a big deal to us are actually like gold.
Yeah, exactly.
For people who are interested in that data.
Yeah, and the way that, like, for example, the Cambridge Analytica situation unfolded, like information like which pages you've liked, what kind of statuses you've put up. So if you're pro Imran Khan, for example, like, and you've liked like thousands of pages of like and your DP has a PTI flag on it or something, that information can be sold to, for example, strategists who can then use that to target like sort of ads, propaganda at you and things like that. So making money off of, and that's both a problem like with social media companies, but also governments can also use your data to find out like who you are and like sort of use that information against you.
Which brings us back to that whole point that we need protections for vulnerable people, and you could become a vulnerable person if somebody decides that you're not the right sort of person. And so what are there some sort of like basic things that we can do to keep our data safe?
So basically, to keep, first thing that you have to secure your accounts. So you have to have two-factor authentication. I'm not sure if you know that there's a two-factor authentication on WhatsApp now.
I do actually. I do know that.
Yay! So it's recently come out. It's very important, and we have to. I know, whatever social media platform you're on, you have to have two-factor authentication. So it just, gives you another security wall. Also, it's very important that, we've been saying this, whatever you share, just make sure that you're sharing it with people you trust.
Right.
And
also try not to post pictures that have a lot of personal information in them, like, your house or, I don't know, something.
And also if somebody is like, if you think somebody could be stalking you, just do not do check-ins.
Okay, don't do check-ins, right?
Right. Not at that time, not at that specific time when you're there.
But on the low, because you don't have to broadcast your location to people.
Yeah. So I mean, you don't know who might end up misusing it. So it's very important.
Don't post your phone number online. Don't post your address.
Don't post your So I mean, if you don't want address or your phone number given out to people, just like Shmyla said, and out to people in your bus, then don't share it online. Share it with your friends. Yes, share it on, if you want to, you can, share it with people on Facebook or on your account, but not with everyone. So
are there any apps that we can sort of download that could kind of, I don't know, block things out? I don't know, like, I don't know the words. Sort of, if like cookies and things.
There's some, actually when browsing, there's some cool extensions that you can use, like Privacy Badger. You can download it, and it can actually, it's a lot of when you go to a site, there are a lot of trackers that are downloaded onto your device, and that information then constantly is collected and then sold, and so you can have Privacy Badger. It's very easy to download and use. Then HTTPS everywhere, where it converts every website into a more secure website.
Oh, really?
So it encrypts the browsing data that you are emitting. So it's really cool.
And like super easy. So you just put HTTPS. Wow. So this is like a conversation that I want to keep having, but unfortunately, we have to relinquish this space. Thank you so much, both of you, for being on the set today.
Thank you so much.
And talking to us about such important information. And I really hope that everybody watching this has learned a few new things about digital cyber security. I'm still going to say cyber. Thank you guys for watching this. Please look up the Digital Rights Foundation Helpline. It is a vital resource for anybody who finds themselves in a situation where they need to talk to somebody about their online safety. It's secure, it's free, and they will help you. If you need it, if a friend needs it, that's where you need to go. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe on an HTTPS browser. And we will see you next time on the coffee table. Bye now.